Hey y'all, welcome to part one of Surviving a Dysfunctional Family. I was born into a family of drug dealers, drug addicts, and drug babies. Let me explain. My grandparents, these lovely people right here, met in the late 60s. My grandmother was married to an Army veteran who served in the Vietnam War, and my grandfather was a cocaine dealer in Harlem. They met sometime in the 60s in New York City, and my grandmother and him had an affair, which ultimately led to the birth of my mother in 1968. So when I asked my grandmother about her birth story, she flat out told me, "I was so high when I had your mother, I don't even remember." By 1970, my grandfather, whose name was Bullet, he got shot probably, I think, 17 or 18 times, if I recall correctly. I really feel like the number was 18, leaving my mother with now 5 children at 30 years old. She chose to pick up his business and become a cocaine dealer, and she served until 2017 when she died. The reason why I feel so comfortable with even saying that is because my grandmother is dead. There's nothing we can do about it now. But I know for a fact growing up that this had a huge impact on my mother, and then I can see now how this also had an impact on me. Let me get into it. My mom did not just start off being some big old horrible bully. Everybody has a villain story, and if I'm honest, my grandmother was a much better grandmother than she was a mother. The things that she did with me and my cousin is completely different from the things that she did with her daughters and her son. So I have to be clear about the fact that sometimes with age, we just get so much better. But nonetheless, my mother experienced a lot of trauma growing up. As I said, my grandfather, who's a very dark-skinned man, was a drug dealer from Harlem, and one of the things that he told my grandmother was that he does not like dark-skinned women. So when he died, my mother was 2 years old, and one of the things that my grandmother would often tell her is about the fact that my grandfather didn't like dark-skinned women, and he would call them black bitches, and he would just be very demeaning towards them, and this ate at my mother's self-esteem. The fact that my mother was only 2 years old when he died, that narrative should have never been spoken on. But that narrative that my grandmother carried throughout her life, speaking that into my mother, it tells me how horrible of a mother she actually was. Because who in their right mind would tell their child that your father did not like you? He didn't like your complexion. Meanwhile, he is the man making the dark-skinned kids because he is the one that's dark-skinned. I'm tired of the people, okay? So sometimes people get clipped early in the story because there's no changing them, and we might as well just let the whole thing go. Sorry, not sorry. I've always felt that my family would not change until my grandmother passed away. And not so oddly enough, the last time I saw my mother was 1 year after my grandmother passed away. So growing up, my mom was bullied. She felt like the black sheep. She felt uncared for. She felt unprotected because her siblings had a different father. They had stability because, again, he was an Army veteran and he had a 9-to-5 job. He was very serious about taking care of his family, even if he was not with my grandmother. And he made it so that his children were able to have what they needed even after his death. He provided for them. Whereas my mother did not have any provision, and my grandmother treated her as such. My grandma also treated me that same way, but we'll get into it. Now, with my mother constantly being abused and bullied in her own childhood by her sisters, by her mom, these are things that my mother would tell me about growing up. She created this persona, this big bully persona of no one's gonna harm me, I'm gonna be the person to harm people. And that makes sense for the times. She didn't have a mother that was protecting her. She didn't have siblings that she felt was protecting her. She did say my uncle was always very big on protecting her. He is a couple of years older than her, but he is the last born of my grandmother's children with her husband. So she always felt like my uncle was there to protect her. but not her sisters. So when it comes to women, my mom had a very tough relationships with women. She does not trust women very easily. It's very hard for her to like women. She easily gets jealous and envious of women. She easily wishes people harm because she's never had a loving environment with women. With that being said, my grandmother really set the stage for drug use in our household. She introduced her children to drugs. She allowed them to do drugs with her, sell drugs for her, test her drugs. And I want to be honest, these are stories that I've heard from my aunts, but this is also stories that I've heard from people that I know that's outside of the family, that have been basically within the family my whole life. Because my grandmother lived in the projects, when my mother was born, she was eligible to get a bigger apartment. So she moved into a 3-bedroom apartment in 1968. And that same apartment is where my mother stays to this day. And I feel like the reason why she's still there in that same place is because she's stuck. And she is like unable to unstuck herself. It's like everything that she's experienced, she has just become this traumatized person that has created this cage around her. And because of that, we do not have a relationship. Because I want so much more for myself, and I find that I cannot want more for myself around somebody who is so easily irritated by my success. My mom has proven to be a very jealous and envious person throughout my life. A person that will literally go ahead and poke holes in my boat as I continue to build, and I can't have that whatsoever. Now, I do understand that she had a mother that was not loving towards her. I've seen it. I lived it. I watched the arguments. I heard my grandmother tell me so many times, girl, fuck her. Don't worry about that girl. Don't worry about what she's saying. Just don't pay her no mind. So if she could say that to me, I can only imagine how she was to my mom. As a matter of fact, sometime between 2013 and 2016, my mom went and visited her father's gravesite for the first time in maybe 2 decades. She took my grandmother with her, of course. And the first thing my grandmother said when she arrived to that tombstone was, "Look at the black bitch you left me with." Now, my mom is not a very outwardly emotional person. She will fight you before anything else. So she is outwardly emotional, but she doesn't show her vulnerability. But I remember when my mother called me and told me what my grandmother said. I could remember hearing the pain in her voice. I could remember her wanting, like holding back her tears because that really hurt her. And it made me see my mom a little more, because I know that my mom has a lot of good days, but a lot of her bad days is because of all of the things that she's seen, heard, and experienced. So as I share with y'all what I've experienced with my mother, I'm not here to make excuses for her. And again, I'm not in contact with her. But my mother probably experienced worse than I did. She probably experienced worse than what it is that she gave me. And I hope that she's able to find freedom from that pain. I know that I'm doing the work to do so, and in order for you to do the work to do so, you also have to look at yourself and the ways that you've shown up. So I can look at myself and how I've showed up in an abusive, manipulated, agitated, just not nice of a way, not kind of a way. I can look at myself because I know that that's not authentic to who I really am. I know that's not my true heart posture. I know that that is a reaction to what was poured into me. As we move forward through this series, I am going to share a lot of the things that I've experienced, and I really just want to speak on how I've learned from them. Yes, a lot of these things have hurt me. Yes, I'm very hurt by the fact that I don't speak to any of my family members because I don't feel like I can trust the elders of my family. And I will speak on all of it. I will speak on as much of it as I can because it is time. I'm no longer hiding. This is not the time for that. So this is the end of part 1. I see y'all in part 2.